Just as the light from stars takes eons to reach us, so it seems with the Montana wind. It has a timeless quality, like the clouds and sky, no beginning and no end. The wind just is.
Just like that.
I'm here.
Sometimes it brings new arrivals who fall from the sky like bright tears from a silver cloud. But more often, it just brings with it a change in the seasons. The writing fools who've settled here like to say the wind in Montana is born in the anger of a summer squall. Or maybe its home is the eastern plains, all flat and severe. Maybe the western mountains, cool and wintergreen. Whatever its origins, the wind always comes from someplace distant. History is like that. Montana history. The dinosaurs came here to die. Lewis and Clark trekked through here to fame and glory. Custer met his match in the Indians of Montana's Great Plains. You can't get more epic than that. So in this program, 3 stories, a trilogy. Stories that will take us the length and breadth of a state that still defines frontier. All too briefly, we're going to a place far from your experience, worn by the sun, torn by the wind, and little changed in spite of all that. Once upon a time, once upon a distant, dangerous, teeth the size of a small refrigerator time, giant beasts roamed these plains. Actually, scientists tell us prehistoric Montana looked much like the present-day Deep South, wide and flat.
A lot of big rivers and an ocean a couple hundred miles to the east of us.
Jack Horner, scientist, knows the Montana Badlands like a cop knows his beat. Jack's beat, though, is a bit hard to pin down. Let's just say that if the past were an opera, Jack would wait forever for the fat lady to sing. His territory stretches back some 60-odd million years, to the age of the dinosaur.
They were creatures in a manner quite reptilian, in their unique and stylish way. And their numbers could be reckoned in the millions, but there are 0 of these heroes in the world today. They had music, art, and fashion. There was dinosauric passion, and I think they'd be enraged and mortified that when they're mentioned today, it's only to say their brains were small and they died.
We started digging a little bit into the hill just to see if there was anything here, because when you see something weathering like that, it could be the beginning of an animal or animals or the end of it.
Thankfully, for all concerned, this was only the beginning of what's probably the most complete Tyrannosaurus rex ever found. On first inspection, the skeleton looks more like some ornately carved rock, and after so many millennia, it is something like rock. The T-Rex, as it's called, is setting on its side, with its many parts scattered over the site like the stuffing of the Scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz. But we're going to give you a brief tour. Beginning at the left side of your screen, the curved piece is most of the backbone. Next is the wide, flat pelvic bone, looking like one side of a giant inverted clamshell. The head is resting as if on its chin, with the snout protruding at a 45-degree angle. And you can easily pick out the thigh bone. The rest, I'm afraid, looks too much like rocks you'd find in your backyard, at least to laymen like you and me. The site is located near the Fort Peck Reservoir, about 150 miles northeast of Billings, and it's accessible only with four-wheel drive, so it's both off-road and off-limits.
We're on a wildlife refuge, and so we really cannot allow too many people, and besides, it disrupts the work.
Yes, this is delicate work, and yes, those are jackhammers. But believe me, the Montana State graduate students know exactly what they're doing.
So we're just going well beyond where we think the last bone could possibly be and go well below that.
Uncovering the bone is a lot of sitting down with your back bent and picking away with ice pick or a dental tool or something like that. So it's kind of tedious. And then when you get to the stage that we're at now, you're back to shovels and picks and jackhammers. So it's more like construction work.
As the dinosaur is carefully exposed, a special glue is applied to harden both the bone and the stone around it. Later, the glue will be dissolved away using acetone. And when the work here is finished, the skeleton will be broken into 4 or 5 large chunks for transport to Bozeman. For at least one visitor to the site, the recovery work is bittersweet. Kathy Wonkel discovered the dinosaur, and she's almost wistful about it.
I'm real happy about the find and that it'll be of scientific value, but this is a very isolated area, or it was until now.
For weeks, camera crews have been showing up as regularly as the sunrise. The folks at Nova are smart. They installed a time-lapse camera in a box overlooking the excavation area. But the locals are beginning to wonder if they haven't opened a kind of prehistoric Pandora's box. What's to prevent others from pillaging the area? Well, state laws for one, and for another, the sheer hell of trying to carve a dinosaur out of the side of a small mountain. This isn't work for the faint of heart or the weak of spirit. In fact, you'd have to be out of your mind or a paleontologist.
I don't worry about why things die. I'm in my business. I just have to be happy that they did.
They were big, dumb, and slow. They couldn't go with the flow. Their brains were small and they died. Their brains were small and they died.
Above the Little Bighorn River in the summer of 1876, more Indians camped in one spot than at any time before or since. They numbered in the thousands, and every one frenzied, impatient, and bent on revenge for the way they'd been forced from their homelands. Into the maw of this angry beast rode George Armstrong Custer and his 7th Cavalry. For Custer, it would be just another rout of the troublesome Plains Indians. One more notch for his belt.
Retirement plans?
Good weekend to be here.
We have several options. I'd like to go to West Point and be commandant there, but possibly my academic career at Point wouldn't lend itself to that. I graduated 34 in a class of 34. Possibly raising thoroughbred horses in Kentucky. That's a thought.
Custer was so cocksure of himself, he often traveled with a retinue of women and hangers-on, like the rock stars of today with their famous groupies. Little Bighorn would be the capper, a victory that would assure him the Democratic presidential nomination and the White House. But in the summer of the centennial, the news from Montana was all bad. The rumors of a massacre soon had the armor of truth. The 7th had been wiped away as if by a divine wind. Hardly what the nation needed in the midst of a birthday celebration. An old Lakota medicine man with the improbable name Sitting Bull hadn't been invited. But he blew out the candles. The massacre has haunted us ever since, like distant thunder. And it has haunted Montana's Indian tribes as well. What most history books have overlooked or deliberately ignored is evidence that Custer alone might have survived. For his earlier massacres of Indian women and children, the Sioux and Cheyenne considered him bad medicine. In Sioux tradition, that meant he was untouchable. Their legends suggest instead that Custer died by his own hand, with a bullet from his own gun. Of course, that will never be the official story. The Custer battlefield was created as a memorial to Custer and his men, but in recent years, it's become a holy place for Native Americans too. For here in this valley, above the Little Bighorn River, they made one of their last stands against the encroachment of the white man. The Indians won this battle in spectacular fashion, but history tells us they lost the war. In fact, it says something about the plight of the contemporary Indian that in nearby Hardin, Montana, the only employment one hot June weekend was reenacting the massacre for the tourists.
I'm Sitting Bull. This guy's a singer. This guy's one of the chiefs.
I'm part of the village people.
She's going to be in the camp today. She wants to ride, but I think she's a little too young. Look at the camera, baby. Say hi.
I came from Coronado, California, and I'm the only white person playing Indian. And I want to be on the winning side, and my sympathy has always been with the Indian.
My sympathy is with the stage manager and his cast of 200.
Expecting a good show today. Everybody knows where they're going to be, and went through it good yesterday, and we know what's going on.
We made a little change of plans. We're going to put all the kids in the wagons. As soon as the Indians hit, we're going to put them all in, because one kid ran under a wagon yesterday, and that's scary.
Yeah, it's a big thing with the Indians and the whites both.
Look at the guy.
They really like to ham it up when they're performing. They carry their spears and their tomahawks and their knives. And they do a good job on the acting part when they attack. Sound effects and everything is real good on this. It's a crowd pleaser.
And afterward, everyone gathers for autographs and handshakes.
I'm sure our forefathers are looking down on us today, real pleased.
Hardin's horse opera might even be good medicine. Out here on the plains, brushed by wind and by history.
As a boy growing up in New England, I never dreamed there could be a place like Montana, a place with a sky so big, as someone once said, it looks like a man started yawning and never stopped. These are landscapes that haven't changed in 200 years. It's the frontier, the way Lewis and Clark saw it, and the Indians before them, and the wind and stars before them. But stop and ask the people who live here now about the wide open spaces, and you get a blank stare almost as big. Don't think too much about it, they'll say, or it's home and not much else. But you can't blame them for that. If the sun comes up in the morning and the moon at night, then there's more important stuff to occupy a man's time. Why even take notice if things keep changing, as they should and always have?
The sky is blue, and then it isn't. The wheat is green, and then it isn't. And all the while, the clouds maintain their steady march above everything, like ghost ships navigating the seasons.
No, I decided that to take the true measure of Montana, I had to find someone who came here from somewhere else. I found him in Livingston, hard at work on his latest project. Russell Chatham was born and raised in California, but to hear him tell it, he was reborn amid the wheat and dust and lonesome light that you find only here, at the gateway of the Great Plains.
I've actually never seen the same light effect twice. It's always different. I mean, the same types of, you may vaguely repeat certain types of cloud, you know, from a technical standpoint, but it's never the same. It's always different. And in that way, that's one thing that's extremely different, noticeably different to me, between where I grew up in California and here. You know, I mean, California has a very interesting climate structure. You know, it never snows, it's never cold, it's never hot, it's always just right, you know, there's no humidity. Well, I sort of thought the whole world was like that. It never occurred to me that there were these really awful places where it was 115 and the humidity was 99.9, you know.
That was nearly 20 years ago. And Montana didn't turn out to be so awful after all. It's not easy living in a place where snow flies around Labor Day, but Chatham seems to have taken the hardships in stride. His paintings reflect not just the heart of the place, but the heartbeat, the whir of butterfly wings, the deep throaty croaks of a bullfrog, or the soft moan of a newborn calf flash frozen in a chilly scene of winter.
The average Sunday painter paints a scene, you know, and if they attempt to paint a landscape, they paint, you know, they see a tree, they see a barn, or, you know, they take these objects and they do their best with them, you know, and it probably, by and large, doesn't occur to those people to see a little deeper into it.
Chatham works from sketches. He tried using photographs, but found that the camera never quite captured what he was looking for. And besides, it seemed somehow a betrayal of his craft.
I mean, if you're going to be a painter, you're not supposed to be trying to imitate what the camera does. You let that information pass through your mind, and in your mind distorts it. And, let your mind amplify the important things and let that become the painting. With the landscape, since you are working with that specific subject, in a sense, you're probing around looking for God. I mean, that's, and I think that really, what are the subjects of the artist? I mean, they either are our world, i.e., landscape, or they are us, and that's all. That's basically what you got. And no matter which one you choose as your the vehicle through which you express your ideas, you are doing that thing. I mean, you are wondering in paint what God is.
And he does it here, in the limitless, infinite, boundless eternity that's heaven's back 40, where the rain whips the mud into peaks, and the wind turns the grasses to oceans, and time not only stands still, but steps aside, because the clouds have the right of way. In Montana.